Welcome to another edition of Close Mode, the Enterprise Sales Show. I'm Brian Dietmeyer, CEO of Close Strong. And today I'm really lucky to be with Hermann Handa, who is the Director of Sales Effectiveness at FCT. And also, I just realized, a founding member of the Sales Enablement Society, now the Revenue Enablement Society. Hermann, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brian. And thank you for having me. It's good to be on your show.
So, Hermann, you and I were talking a week or so ago, and we talked about competitive enablement, which kind of tickled my fancy, and I said, "Hey, let's talk about this." And I know it's a central part of what you do, and in my opinion, one of the most critical aspects of selling. But maybe for folks who aren't very familiar with competitive enablement, could you just define that for us from your perspective?
Absolutely, Brian. It is really the activities that you do to equip your team with the knowledge and the training they need to gain competitive advantage over your competitors, over your sales rivals. So it is designed to give them an upper hand in competitive deals. That's a simple, quick definition in a nutshell.
I want to talk about ideal state in a few moments, but before we do that, do you think there are things that companies are doing that they believe is competitive enablement, but they might be falling short of what your view is of like true competitive enablement?
Yes, absolutely. The biggest mistake companies make is number one, they're not systematically collecting intelligence on their competitors, and really, I think it is a missed opportunity. And unless you're in a monopoly, you actually do not operate in a vacuum, and you do have competitors that are after your business. So that's a bit of a mistake. The second biggest mistake, is really thinking that competitive intelligence is competitive enablement. It simply isn't. Competitive intelligence, in my books, is collecting raw information and analyzing raw information and providing that analysis to your stakeholders, whether that's the executive team or the product management team. And you really cannot provide this raw data to your sales team without commentary, and that's when competitive enablement comes in. It takes it one step further. It is about creating messaging and positioning around the data points and the analysis that you collected. For example, if the competitor has or releases a new capability, you need to package up that messaging and have your sales reps go to market with the same message. Otherwise, if you just provide them the raw data without messaging, you're going to have 10 different reps message in 15 different ways, and as we know it, that is not optimal. That's a missed opportunity for actually using the intelligence that has been gathered.
Now, my next question was going to be about ideal state, and I think you just hit some of the ideal state. Is there anything else in ideal state if you were to think about a really well executed competitive enablement initiative?
Yes, so I do think of this as a pyramid where there's different layers, and the ones that I mentioned are towards the bottom, and at the top layer are the companies that do this well. And I've recently come across a study where only 20% of the reps who participated was by the product marketing alliance gave their competitive enablement teams a score of 8 out of 10, 8 or higher, meaning that only 20% of the companies do this well, or at least their sales reps believe that do this well. And these are the companies that actually realize the value of packaging up a competitive info, competitive analysis, and then fully enabling their team to compete. And I do want to mention here a couple of points that are typical of companies who go all in and do this well. Number one, it is supported at the executive level. Without it doesn't work. Much like sales enablement in general, it does not work if it's not fully supported. And there's at least one full-time person dedicated to competitive intelligence slash competitive enablement. These companies update battle cards not once a year or not twice a year, every 6 months, but real time as new information comes in. And at this level, they would typically have technology platform implemented as well for competitive enablement. And also they're really good at creating differentiation. They're really good at creating talking points, talk tracks for the sales team, so that they can hammer that message home properly and win those deals. And at this level, I do believe from my own experience that discounting is much less frequent simply because you're an orange among all the apples. So you've differentiated your solution well from your competitors, and you look different. You're you're different in the customer's mind. And also these companies retain top talent because number one, they're winning deals, they're able to close more deals, and therefore reps make more money. So they stick around.
Well, it's why when you and I first started discussing this, that I said I share this with you, that I think it's the core of selling, and having been a sales leader and a sales consultant for many years, I don't see a lot of people doing it well. We've done a bunch of win loss analysis, and Hugh, the gentleman who leads that for us, said, after 12 years and $20 billion of win loss analysis, I can tell you why winners win. I was a little intrigued, and I was like, yeah, I think that's an important thing for us in this space to know. He said winners win when they show customers how they meet their needs at higher confidence and lower risk than the alternative. And which really, I mean, that requires competitive enablement. You can't make that stuff up on the fly. And it also, to the other point you were making, Armand, it helps you defend your commercial terms. The more you're hitting their needs at higher confidence and lower risk, the more you can defend commercial terms. So I just again want to add why I think it's so important. So let's talk a little bit about execution. If one was starting kind of from scratch or wherever the usual organization is, what are the first few kind of minimum steps that people can start thinking about to build out their enablement?
Like I mentioned in my previous answer to your question, there, you have to get executive buy-in, or at least put it on their radar. Know that, or let them know that this project is going on, and that you're testing it out. Without that, it just won't fly, because number one, it's going to require your resources. If you don't have a full-time person, then a part of your time will have to be dedicated, or someone's time, and that's resources taken away from something else. So you do have to have executive buy-in and approval on that. Number two, and this is, by the way, quite high level, uh, define what you want, right? You can't just say, I'm going to start doing competitive enablement and no goals, right? It should start, typically, I would say, start with sales goals, but it can include product development goals, or executive goals. And then as you find information out, as you find value in doing your activities, let the executive teams know, keep them informed. That'll get you buy-in, and will show the value. And then the biggest thing, the big one of the biggest mistakes I see is especially when companies have limited resources, they want to analyze every single competitor they have. It's like, focus on your top one, two, three competitors. Identify who you're losing against most, who's costing you the most margin, or whatever your criteria is. Which we talked about defining your goals earlier. So if your criteria is to increase margin or speed up your sales cycles, make sure that you identify those competitors that are biting into these results that you're trying to achieve. That you know they're not getting you to where you are. You need to lower your prices, etc. So identify the ones that you want, and then obviously you need to do your research. You need to validate their strengths and weaknesses. You need to validate your strengths and weaknesses with the market as well. That's typically through win loss analysis. um, and this is where very often companies make incorrect assumption about why companies, or why their customers buy their competitor, and it turns out that's not really the reason, right? um, so it is important to know those things. And also, I found that very often, reps will tell you one thing, why customers buy your solution, and it is completely different. And I've seen statistics around this where they only get it right 40% of the time. So 60% of the time, the reps are wrong as to why customers buy you or buy the competitor. So make sure that you do that. And once you collected the raw data, you have the analysis completed. Turn that into messaging, right? because that's where it lands. That's where it lands for your deals. That's where it lands for your revenue. And don't just create the content and throw it over to sales across the fence, so to speak, whatever that fence is, wherever you're sitting. You may be sitting in marketing, you may be sitting in product marketing or product, etc. Don't just train them. Make sure that they know it. It is incredible how many companies just hand over pieces of information on either in digital format or on paper. Here we go, sales team, read it and then go and sell. It is mind-boggling how many companies expect their reps to practice in front of their customers. Right? You do not practice in front of your customers. You practice in a safe environment. So have somebody make sure that they lead those knowledge sessions, those role plays, whatever they are. And that's where companies fall short. So do not leave this step out. It is critical. And then gather feedback: what's working, what's not, and then finally measure. Right. Whatever measurement you're after, as we discussed before, do you want to increase your win rates? Do you want to increase your or shorten your sales cycle? Do you want to increase margins? Stop discounting, whatever that is. So measure. Make sure that that you're able to show the results, and results, if you've done well, I guarantee you will come. It is such a low hanging fruit and has such an outsized impact for the activity that it's hard to believe unless you start doing it. Now, these are the main things. There are other things, smaller things, like make sure that you have a process for disseminating that information. Make sure you gather, you crowdsource as much as you can, etc. But I think I've highlighted the main points around this.
Yeah, I love the point you made it earlier, and I'm glad you brought it up again about and the way you just said it was different. Don't practice in front of the customers. That's unbelievably valid. I want to add kind of a follow up question about this. There are different levels of competitive enablement. To me, the ultimate is how do you move metrics in the customer organization better than that alternative? I think there's probably a lot of feature function stuff you can put in there, but the question is like how much of your drill down is actually here's the evidence of the metrics we move better than this alternative.
Absolutely. I mean, if you have that information at your fingertips, then yes, you need to compete and show those metrics. And one of the easiest metrics to track is your win rates in your competitive deals, because uh, that is, if there's only 100% of deals, right? And if you win 60% of those, that the competition wins 40% of those when going head to head. So you have information. You won't have information on everything. You may not have information on their margins, etc. But it is important to measure how much or what you've done, and also whatever your gain is going to be your competitor's loss. So every deal that you win is every deal or rather or amount of money that they will not be able to invest in their sales organization, in their development. So that's why it's also so critical to do competitive enablement correctly, because you're strengthening yourself and you're weakening your competitor rather than vice versa if you keep losing deals. I'm not sure if this answers your questions, Brian.
We're definitely getting there. I do have one of the things that occurred to me as we talk about this is like how complex this is. For example, is there a different competitive enablement model for each solution you sell and each customer alternative that you face? Like how many different sort of models or views are there of this?
Question is yes, and the question is no at the same time. And it's yes because really the core activities are the same, right? You're collecting information, you're analyzing information, and you're enabling the sales team. So those are the same things. Those are the same processes. However, it's a no because industries are different, right? And deals have different sizes to them, different length of sales cycles, etc. And that's where things will vastly differ. For example, I was involved with an organization where deals were in excess of several $100,000, and the deals weren't many. If you were a rep, you closed maybe one a quarter. So for every single opportunity, there was a significant account planning and opportunity planning that the competitive enablement team was involved in, simply because there was the value of the deal was so big, and you needed to do very well. Otherwise, if you lose a couple of those deals, if you have a 25% win rate, for example, you're not going to have a good year, right? So it needed competitive support. On the other hand, if you're selling a $5,000 solution, and the deals are fast and you're closing several deals a week, you simply don't have the bandwidth, and it would be crazy to expect a competitive enablement person to be in every single deal. So that is really the no part of the answer. It varies on depending on industry, and it varies depending even within an industry depending on the deal size, on the solution that you're selling.
I wonder sort of how organic this is. Let me give you an example. Let's say your company rolls out a new feature, a new product, and it changes your competitive positioning, or your competitor does that. Or, I think about during COVID, like customer needs were changing like crazy because, supply chains were all messed up and that kind of thing. So let's say your company rolls out something and their competitor rolls out something. Is there sort of a just in time feature of this where you can call, like, say, hey, our competitive enablement has just shifted. We just found out this new thing. And is there a way to do this kind of real time or just in time?
Yes, that is actually a really, really good question. And I keep warning every single competitive enablement person that I come across is features, yeah, keep an eye on them, but don't sweat them too much, because each little feature will not change the competitive dynamic, or the competitor's value proposition. So keep an eye on. Of course, you got to keep an eye on the features, and and make sure that you have proper response if it's significant. If it's not, it's probably not worth another battle card, right? Or an entry into the battle card. It's companies release new features and capabilities all the time. Now, when a competitor's competitive premise shifts, you'll know about it, right? It's not going to surprise you. The entire company will know about it. For example, I was involved with a company that was a category creator back about 10, 15 years ago, and we had a lot of money flowing into the industry simply because of the success of the company. I was marketing automation, and all of a sudden one morning we go into the office, we see this press release, and they created a capability. It was more than just a feature. It was a module, if you will, that shifted the conversation over from the CMO partially to the CRO. And we were at that, we did not expect anything like that, but we did hit the panic button because CRO is now in the deal, and we never spoke to the CROs. So we scrambled a bit, released our product, which our competitive capability, which was better. And in the meantime, we had to adjust our messaging. But again, things happen quickly, and that was something that we could not have missed. So yes, keep an eye on the features, but really, really only react in a big way if their positioning switches, or if it's a significantly new capability.
I've been in sales long enough that I recall, like, you don't talk bad against your competitor thing. And I wonder, like, how people react to this level of competitive enablement, which is going directly after that competing alternative. How do you feel about that sentiment that either used to or still exists in sales?
I actually feel very strongly about it, and I cannot tell you how many calls I've heard and call recordings I've heard where a competitor would bash our company, or another company, and it is just not cool. Just don't do it, right? You don't do it in the olden days, and you shouldn't do it now. In fact, what you should do is give credit to the competitor. It is going to go a long way, and give credit to something that they do well. And I know it's hard to believe, but competitors do stuff well as well, right? Not just you. They have good points. And let's take a competitor that is the cheapest in the market. And yes, maybe their product is not that great. Maybe they're missing features, But what they do really well is being the cheapest in the market, and you do have to acknowledge that, right? They're the price leader. So be open about your competitor strong points, acknowledge them, and you're going to earn your earn credibility and the trust from your prospect. um, it boggles my mind how many companies or how many sales reps just get really defensive when a competitor is mentioned. And I recently heard a statistic, by the way, that about 86.5% of the deals across industries, prospects will ask about your competitor, about your views on the competitor, or comparison, and therefore it is really important that you know your differentiation points, because it will come up. If you don't bring it up, customers will bring it up. But let me make one quick point. Um, you can go directly after a competitor without bashing them, right? You can mention something negative about their competitive premise, right? If they're the least expensive, then you can talk about how companies that typically don't invest into their staffing will have longer implementations or slower product releases. You'll have less access to customer success, and you've never really mentioned the competitor. You just laid a landmine, if you will, that they will step on when they talk about that. Hey, we're the least expensive, and then the prospect will already think about, yes, my other rep mentioned that, and because you guys are the least expensive, I'm not going to have the support, I'm not going to have new product releases. So no need to bash, no need to bash. Focus on other things like their competitive premise, right? Or the central idea to how they go to market. And it'll go a very long way with your prospect, because you've taught them something new at the same time.
Yeah, and my next question was going to be around the customer benefit, and you just started hitting on it. So what I heard you say is like, if we're improving the customer's decision and bringing objective facts to them, that's almost a consultative role we're playing, and that's the switch between attacking the competition and bringing facts to the table to help the customer make a better decision, more holistic decision. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely. Your credibility will go a long way. You're coming from a position of strength, and you're coming from a position of confidence when you praise your competitors. You're not afraid to mention them. You're not afraid to highlight their strengths, and that will resonate very well with the prospect. So, and actually, let me tell you a quick story here. I had one of my battle cards end up at the competitor's company. I don't know how it got out, but whatever you create, you pretty much can count on it being seen by the competitor. That is something that you'd have to be careful. So hence, be careful about what you teach your reps. So likely a prospect forwarded it, right? We were in a competitive battle, and then one of our sales rep must have forwarded it. I don't know. I knew their VP of sales through having met several times at conferences. Industries tend to be sometimes very very small, and he picked up the phone when the my battle card landed on his desk, or in his inbox rather. He called me, and he was actually very very grateful that we did not teach our reps to disrespect and to bash them. We spoke highly of them, and that goes also a long way with the prospect as well. And when it lands with your competitor, they'll be happy that you're not bashing them, if they're the type who also will not bash you. So there's a bit of friendliness going on there, but bashing them is really unprofessional. And as a sales rep, you will lose credibility. Period.
Yeah, and the converse, as you said, if you're doing it properly, it's actually is a value add to helping the customer make better decisions. So my last question for you has to do with sort of, I feel this is the case, and I don't want to I don't want to lead the witness here, but I feel like the market shifted to make this even more important today. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. The latest stats I've seen around how competitive deals are today. One of the studies puts it at 88% saying that deals are more competitive this year than they've ever been. And another study puts it at just over 90%, at 91%. So, and honestly, I don't know where the other 10% come from, because every industry, everybody I know, they do compete. So, good for them if they don't, if they feel that their competitors not are not putting more pressure on their companies. But these kind of statistics tell you that you actually do have to go out, do your research on your competitors, careful research analysis, and then enabling your sales team. Simply because you know you have to let them know how to differentiate for the customer, because if they don't differentiate for the customer, your customer will not figure out your differentiators. They will not figure out how you're different. So you have to enable your reps in this environment where deals are getting tougher, sales cycles are getting longer, there are more people getting involved in purchase decisions. So you do have to do a good job at finding what those differentiators are, and then teaching your reps to message around those differentiators. And if we look at SaaS, for example, or even technology, the the companies, the number of companies competing for your dollar is increasing day by day by day. So you got to arm your reps. Otherwise, you're there, you're stand to lose more deals than you win.
It's interesting too, talking about market shifts. I read a book recently called "The End of Competitive Advantage" by Rita Hunter McGrath, which is a pretty sad title for those of us who sell. But the point that she made, which goes back to this, how is the market shifting? Um, she makes the point that we used to compete on long-term competitive advantage. We'd put our plan in place in the beginning of the year, and we'd leverage that structural advantage all year. And she said now the market changes so quickly and people copy things and innovate so quickly that we need to learn to compete on a series of short-term transient advantages. And to me, that's one of the reasons to have a really strong competitive enablement sort of structure in place, because you can capitalize on those short-term advantages. And I think that's a fair way to look at the market structure today. It's not, the kind of sustainable advantages we used to have.
Absolutely, and then you will be competing against companies today that you haven't heard of yesterday, simply because there's so much innovation going on, and then you will have to respond to that. So, agreed. It is very different than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. Change is very rapid.
This has been again, it's a fascinating subject to me, and there's a bunch of key points here, but I love the notion of executive level buy off on this thing. I love you said, I'm paraphrasing, but you need to be objective in this analysis, right? About competitor strengths and your strengths. I like that. You need to practice. I thought that was a key piece. It's not enough to put the content out there. And there is a customer value part of this. We're being prescriptive. We're helping them. So I think there's an awful lot of smart reasons to do this. The biggest being sort of winning more competitive fights. So you've been super gracious with your time and sharing your expertise and your ideas, and it's fun working with you as well. I really appreciate this.
Thank you very much, Brian. It was fun being on your show. I hope I provided a few valuable nuggets to your listeners. So thank you very much. It was my pleasure.